Hello, Vishal. So let's just wait a little bit for and let other people join as well. And please like and subscribe to the channel so that whenever we go live, whenever the new video is coming up, you'll get a notification and then you can join in straight away. Hi, Kapil. So I was just mentioning that uh, kindly like and subscribe to the channel so that whenever the new video comes up, you get a notification and you can join in straight away so that you don't miss any part of the video. Okay, cool, good enough. So if you have any questions from yesterday, we can take those up first and then start with our course. Otherwise, we can go ahead with the functions. So if you can just comment in, that'll be easier for me to know. All right. So I think nobody has any questions from the past lecture. So let's jump in right away to IntelliJ IDE. And okay. So I believe you can see the IDE now. If not, please comment here and I will have a look at it. All right. So this is basically our course for today, basically the course contents for today. So today we'll cover how to create functions in Kotlin, what are extension functions, how to use Lambda functions, and what is the meaning of higher order functions. So all of this, please explain when is expression with example. Yeah, sure, Kapil. Let me take that first. So, all right. So let's take when as an expression. So this is from the lecture 2 regarding control flow. Okay, so let's take this question first and then we'll move forward with the functions. So first of all, let's create a variable. So an expression basically means that it will return a value. So we have seen yesterday that how to use when as a statement, but today we'll see how to use it as a expression. So let's say val day is equals to, and I will assign it a when expression. So here let me pass, let's say 4, and then if the value is 1, I will say it is a Sunday, and if the value is 2, I will say that it is a Monday, like that, so on. Let me just complete this code. I believe you are getting the idea what I'm trying to say here. So this will return the string value to the day variable. Wednesday, Thursday, T capital, and then just 2 of them left, 6 and 7, Friday and Saturday, end of the week. Yes, that's what we are waiting for. All right, so we can go ahead and type in an else condition as well. So otherwise, if you put any other number, we'll say invalid day. All right, so let's take a println statement here and say today is $day. All right, so the value is coming from here. So ideally, Wednesday should get printed. So let's see what happens. We are running this program and today is Wednesday. So here there's a constant which will be matched to these values as constant, and this expression is returning a value basically which is going into the variable day. Otherwise, if we are using a statement, then it is basically just as a statement and it is not returning anything at all. So this is the way you can use when as an expression, and you can pass in any method here, get day, and then that getDay method can be returning some value. So let's create the function here. Let's take this opportunity to start today's lecture, and I hope Kapil this answers your question. So here we are just creating a normal function by using the fun keyword, and here's the name of the function. We use these brackets to denote that this is a function, and here we're returning an integer value 4, and the way we tell the return type for the method is that we type a colon here just like we do it while defining a data type, and then we define the return type here. So if we run the program now, again today is Wednesday because the value is 4, I can change it to 7, and then today is a Saturday. Alright, so let's jump and see if you have any other comments. Okay, so we have something here, please. Video is not clear. Okay, let me see what's exactly the issue here. I think I can see the video correctly. I'm also checking it out on YouTube. So Vishal, are you still not able to see the video properly? Have you tried to increase the quality of the video? Because here I'm at 720 pixels and it is working fine for me. Let me switch it to this. So here I am able to see the video perfectly fine. Okay, good, Vishal. Thanks for letting me know. And I hope everybody is able to see the video correctly. I hope, Vishal, you have been able to. So the screen will go blank for a little bit while, but please don't worry about it. It will come back right away. All right, so I'm jumping back to the IntelliJ IDE, and okay, so did you miss any of this, Vishal or Kapil? If yes, then please let me know. If you have, did I answer your question, Kapil? Okay, so let's wait for them to reply back and then we'll start again. Okay, all right, Kapil, then let's jump on forward. Cool. So here we have created a function here. What we can do is we can use the dot notation to call this function if this function is defined in class, but since this is just a file, we are using calling the function directly. Otherwise we can say class name dot the method name, just how it works in C++ and Java. Alright, so instead of having a return statement here, I can remove this return statement and remove the body in fact, and I can just return 7. So this method can directly take a value or an expression here. I can even write in an expression here which can compute some value and provide it to this method. So in that case also this will work just fine. So this is something which is available only in Kotlin. It's not available in Java. So that's something which we should keep in mind. So let's see and create a method square which will take a number which is of an integer type, and it will return something in an integer type. So here I will not create a body, I will directly write number into number. Alright, so this will basically return the square of the value that is being passed to it, which is number. So here I can, let's try to call this method println square of, let's say 4 is, we'll use the dollar symbol and call this method square, and we'll pass in the value, let's say 4. So That's how we're calling the method. But the thing that I want to mention here is that I can also use the named arguments here, so which is very beneficial. I can write in num equals to 4. So this feature is usually helpful where you have a lot of different arguments. So let's try to create a method here, print student marks. So this is the example of a named argument here. So let me take a few values here. The name of the student is in string, then he has marks in maths, which is integer or maybe float, depending on your choice, and marks in history, integer again, and then science, integer again, and then take, let's say, Hindi, integer again. So we have a lot of parameters here, and we are just trying to use this function. So this can happen with any of the function while we are paying marks of student are as follows, and we can print in the values. So just be a little patient here, guys. Let me complete this code. Maths will be $maths, and the same way for, so you get the idea, right? Oops. Okay. Right. History, science, and Hindi. Maths, history, science, and Hindi. Okay, all good. So let's call this method here, println student marks, and then we call this method print student marks. So now it's really confusing for me to enter the values for these arguments. So what I can use the named argument functionality in Kotlin. This is called as named arguments. I can write name equals to and define a name here. So let's call Vishal. And then I can write the marks in maths equal to 99. So it's a very brilliant student, I must say. And history is equals to, say, 99 again. And then we have science. I can give some marks in science as well. And then we can give some marks in Hindi as well. So this is the way we can use named arguments functionality, which makes it very easy for you to provide the values to your arguments while calling the method. So here we can also change the order. The order doesn't have to be necessarily the same. So you can write it in any order that you want. Otherwise, it gets really difficult for you to remember which order you should be providing the values to. So that is a functionality called as named arguments. So let's run this program and see what happens. So the marks of Vishal are so and so. All right, cool. So let's do one more thing here. Let's say that if no marks are given to the student in maths, by default the marks will be 0, and the same is the case for everything. So let's say that the student did not appear for any of the subjects. So in that case, the marks should definitely be 0 by default. So I'll go ahead and skip the value of history here and then see what happens. So let's run this program. And then by default, the marks in history will be 0. So this is called as a default argument. So using default arguments, you can provide a default value to function arguments. Right, I think that is pretty Okay, so I have never scored so much. All right, cool. So no worries, Vishal. It's good to have so much marks. All right, so let's go further and see what we have next. I think we have. Um, okay, so we already covered this. So what is this called? The name of this thing is called as a single expression function. Here you can have even a when statement or any kind of expression. You can have an if expression, you can have a when expression. So anything would be okay. So let's see something. Oops. Okay, let's see something different here. So let's create a function get sum. So in here we'll pass a vararg. So vararg is basically referring to different numbers here. It's like you can consider it as an array. It will return me an integer type of value, which is basically the sum. We'll create a variable here sum equals to 0 by default, and then we will use the for each collections property or nums to calculate the sum of this function. So here you can see as soon as I pressed enter here for this body, I can see that it is referring to each value of nums one by one. So vararg is basically an array of different integers here. You can choose it to be string or character, whatever you want it to be. So here we are accessing it one by one, and the by default name is given as it. So even if you define the each of the value as it or not, the name will be it. So let's take an example here. I will write sum plus equals to it. Alright, so this it is referring to each value or each different values in this array. Alright, so we can skip this as well because definitely by default the name is it. If you want it to be a different name, you want it to be number, and you can change the name like this. So that's all. So here you have created a function and you're using the collections property for each. Let's call this method over here println sum of 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 is dollar symbol get sum, and you can pass an array, or I just prefer to pass comma separated values. That should be okay, and you can choose to write it as a named argument or not, and in that case you'll have to use this curly braces to define the values. So yep, you can choose to have it or ignore it. No worries, let's run this program. So the sum of 1 to 3 5 is 15. Alright, so let's move forward and see what we have. So all of these functions are returning something, but we can have some function which is just doing some stuff and it is not returning anything. So let's call it myPrint, and what it will take some data in string format and it will just print that data. Okay, so this is not returning anything and there's no return type required. So in Java you had a void return type, and in Kotlin you have unit. So unit is basically a class. Here you can choose it to define explicitly that this function is returning a unit type, and you don't really have to have a return statement. A return statement can be skipped here, and Kotlin compiler is also showing here that you don't really need to define this explicitly, redundant unit return type. So it's also recommending us to remove it. So we will go ahead and remove it. Otherwise you can just keep it. I'll keep it here so that you can have a look at later time in this code. Alright, so let's go forward and see what is the infix notation. So this is really cool feature of Kotlin which I really like, and let's see what it does. So I will use the infix keyword here and create a function, and I'll say int dot plus. I'm basically creating an extension function here, and we'll talk about extension functions, but you can have a look at this right now. And I will pass in some value here. You can say x or value, doesn't really matter, and it will return me an integer type. Okay, so this is a function which we have created over here, and what it will do is it will just basically return you the integer type that you're calling this function on, this plus x, or sorry, the value. So it will return you the sum of these two values. So let's see, we did something wrong here. Conflicting overloads, infix. Okay, so I think I've already created a function here plus already in some of the file. So we can have a function here as my plus function. So that should work. Okay, so let's call this function, and this is the really cool part. How do we call an infix notation or a function? You can call it whatever you like. And so what do I have to do? I'll write a println statement. My sum is dollar symbol, create an expression, and I'll write I want to add 1 plus 2 of 1 and 2 is, I'll write 1 and then I'll write my plus and then I'll write 2. So this is the infix notation, which means that you're calling my plus on this integer object and you're passing in this integer as this integer variable or this integer constant as a argument here. So one is the integer part, which is this, you're calling my plus on this, and you're passing in this value. So this will print my sum of 1 and 2 is 3. Let's run this program. Okay, cool. So this is basically about infix notation, and you can go ahead and use the conventional notation as well. You can just use the dot notation and pass it to as an argument. So that's fine. Let's say value is equals to, run this program, and the my sum is 1, 2, sum of 1 and 2 is 3. Okay, let me jump back and see if you have any questions. Okay, no questions allowed. I think we're going good. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to comment. I will reply them right away. Okay, cool. So I think we are done with functions here now. So we can jump on to the next topic of this video, which is extension functions. And guys, if this video is helping you out, please do not hesitate to press the like button. It will mean a lot to me. Thank you so much. So coming back to extension functions, they are basically Kotlin provides you the ability to extend a class with new functionality, like without even having to inherit it from a class. So we just saw an example right here that we created a function right out of integer class, because this is a Kotlin integer class. Let me jump into this. It's a public class integer and it has a private constructor, which means I cannot instantiate this class. And so Kotlin is giving me this functionality to kind of provide an extended ability to create some methods which are a part of that class, but by not extending that class. So let's create another extension function on string maybe. So let me call it function and string dot say hello to okay, we can say good morning. That makes much more sense right now. Say good morning. All right, and this is the way we created a method say good morning. So what it will do is it will just return you this. Let me just type it right away and then explain what's happening. Okay, so basically we have a string here which will say good morning and the name of the person. So this string has to be name of a person. If it is the name of a person, we will say good morning and the name of the person will be printed here. Okay, let's see what we're getting a suggestion. I think Kotlin is asking us to remove this as we don't need it. Okay, so I think this should be okay. Okay, so we need to give it a return type as well. So it will return a string because we are returning here. Otherwise, we can just go ahead, remove this, and remove the return, and just put an equals to sign here. So this is much better than uh, providing it a body. And let's say good morning to Vishal and Kapil. All right, println Vishal dot say good morning. Okay, so now the cool thing is that I could call this method on any string throughout my project. So by defining this extension function, so this will come in really handy if I have to create a util function which can be called anywhere throughout the project, or it makes much more sense for date type conversions where you have a date in or let's say dd hyphen hyphen y and you want to convert it to, let's say, comma yy, which means here it will print, the format will be like this: 09 09 2020, and then here this means it will print the actual uh, name of the month. So it will be September 2020. All right, so let's say you have to do a date type conversion like this. So this makes much more sense to extend the string class, and you can provide a string like this and it will convert you and provide the string like this. But for now, let's keep it easy and simple, and we'll say good morning to Kapil as well. So let's run this and see what happens. Okay, did we get any error? No. Let's run this again. Okay, so that is fine. So good morning Vishal and good morning Kapil. So this is the way you can create extension functions. So as said earlier, this will make much more sense to create a util method in a util class which can do some type conversion like this, or you have to convert some, let's say you have to convert 1000 into the thousand notation. Let's say you have 10,000 and it should be displayed as 10,000. You can use this string or this on a string or in an integer, where you can just type in a function, the class, and 2000 string, and then you can return a string here, or whatever you want to do, you can do that here. So there goes your expression. So this is the way you create an extension function. Basically, this is a type on which data type you want to extend, and the name of the function and the return type, or you can choose not to have a return type and just write your expression straight away. Alright, so let's go further. This is all for extension functions. Let's jump into Lambda functions. So this is another one of the beautiful creations in Lambda in Kotlin, which I really love. So let's see what are Lambda functions. And let me have a look if you have a question. Okay. So we're going good so far. Cool. So lambda functions are basically a function with no name. So they are just like an expression, they're just like a function literal, which don't have any name, but they are present. So I believe we have already used the lambda functions previously, but we'll have a look at it right now. So let's create a lambda function called a sum. Let's create a variable. This is sum variable, and it will return a function of a type which will take two parameters as integer, and it will return the sum of it in an integer form. So here we go and write the lambda function. So now this is the part where I start to write the lambda function. So all the functions have a body, but the lambda functions does not have any name, so it has a body. So in the body, I will give the data type of the first parameter and then the second parameter. And now after this symbol, whatever comes will be the body of that lambda function. So now comes the body, like here. So I don't have to do much here. I just have a simple, very small expression which returns the value of like the sum of two numbers, x plus y. So the way we define that what kind of function we are accepting is that we are taking two arguments which are this, and the data type of those arguments is integer, and it is returning an integer type. If we say that it is returning a string type, then we'll have an error here. In that case, I'll have to return something like this, x plus, like I'll have to convert the result into a string. So I'll have to do something like this. So adding these two values, and then so this expression will not add two values, but it will accept a string. So you mean what I'm saying, right? So it will accept a string. So here I'm not using a string, I'm just adding these two values. It's an integer here. So the meaning is that this is the way you define the parameters, basically which type it is and how many of them are there, and everything before this arrow symbol will be the parameter side of the function, and everything after it will be the body, and this is the return type of the lambda function. So here we have a simple lambda function called a sum. Let's call it here println sum of, let's say, 10 and 20 is we call sum, and it pass in the values 10 and 20. So this is an expression, we need to put it in the curly braces. Let's run this. The sum 10 and 20 is 30. Say sum of, that makes more sense. Alright, so this is a very simple lambda function. So lambda function has no name, it is just a function with no name, just the body. Alright, so let's do something really complex here. So I want to do that. Let's take a bunch of names, and then I want to select names of length 5, and then I want to move them to uppercase UER and then print them. So this is basically a lot of for loops and if conditions, and let's see how Kotlin helps us to achieve this. So Kotlin helps us in a very easier fashion to achieve this, and let's look at that. how to achieve this. So what I'll do is I'll just create a variable here, my result, and then I will perform some operations on names. So let's create a value names. It is basically an array of a few names. Let's give the first name as Kapil, the second name as Vishal, the third name as Karan, and you can give a few bunch more names, John, Pinder, and what else? Let's take, I'm just running out of names, so Sunny. Okay, so here are a bunch of names, and I have to do like select the names of length 5. So there's an operator called as filter, which we can apply on strings. It's a part of Kotlin collections. And we have a lot of functions over here, filter not null, like a bunch of methods over here. So you can just say filter, and let's expand the body and see it is providing me with each of the strings one by one. So it is providing me a string one by one. So we'll call it so we'll call it the name like this, and then we want the name to be of length 5. So we type name.length equals to 5. So this is basically filtering with this condition, and now you can use a dot notation to move on to the next part of this. Now we can okay, let's take one more scenario over here. Let's sort the values as well. So sorting is I believe quite tedious in Java or some other languages. We have to sort alphabetically. Let's do that as well. So now we will use another method. So we have method sorted by, and we can just type in, we can sort by the string itself. So the name is it. You don't have to define anything at all because each string is named as it by default. And we can go ahead to the next step, which is we have to convert it to an uppercase. So here we can use a map operation. So map, people coming from RX Java background would be familiar with map, flat maps, and a lot of functions. So we have that in Kotlin as well, but they are not exactly the same. They are different, but it's good to see Kotlin having that kind of functionalities. So here I'm assessing each of the name one by one, and I will map them to uppercase. I'll write like this, name dot to uppercase, lowercase, or whatever operation I want to perform on a string. I can do that. I can even say hello, say good morning, sorry. I can even say good morning to the string. So name dot to uppercase. So now the thing is that the last value of this will be returned. Here I can do a bunch of operations. I can write a for loop here. I can do a lot of stuff here, but nothing will matter. And I can perform the operations here and then return the last value here. So the value which is returned last will be returned. So it can get a bit confusing as well in the first, but alright, so here we have the result of all the arrays. So whatever names have the length as 5 will be sorted by alphabetically, and then they will be converted to uppercase, and we will print this result. Let's call it my result names, and then print this over here, println my selected names are dollar my result names. That is it. It's just a variable. Let's call this run this method, and so we have three names here: Kapil, Karan, and Sunny, all converted to uppercase because they are of length 5. So now we don't even really need to use this name. We can remove this. It is optional. We can just use it. By default, it means in it. So that means we don't need this. So by default, it means it. And then we can move it all into a single line. Okay, so this is just a single line of code which is doing a lot of operations, and that is the true power of Kotlin, I must say. And there are a bunch of other methods other than filter and sorted by and uppercase and map, which you can use and explore further, which will help you to write your code much better and in a much cleaner way. All right, so let's see if anyone of you has any question. So we have somebody joining here, Rosaline. Hi, Rosaline. I believe you're joining in a bit late. However, if you have any questions, please comment here and we will resolve those questions. So today we are learning functions and we have a class every day at 6 p.m. Indian Standard Time, and you can feel free to subscribe to this channel to receive a notification to join to this free Kotlin lecture. All right, so I believe we are done with Lambda functions, but let me just explain one more thing here, and let's expand this thing a little bit for now. If you have any questions regarding this, please ask it right away. It will be a good time. Okay, so here you must be wondering that what is the value that is being returned here. So this is the value here, and what I can do is I can even write a return statement here, and I can write it like this: return at the rate of filter. So this is the value which will be returned by filter, and then we jump on to the next part, and then so by default whatever is the last value that will be returned by sorted by. If I write something like this 1 2 3, so 1 2 3 will be actually going into the map like that. So this is not correct. So we can write return at the rate of sorted by. Sorry. And we can provide a value. So this value will be returned by sorted by, but definitely this is optional and you can remove it, and you don't necessarily need it if you have very simple code like this. But I will have two copies of this, one with these annotations and one without it, so that you can use it in future and remember what's exactly happening. So I'll have two notations of this. One will be this and another will be without the return statement. All right. Okay. Cool. I really love this functionality in Kotlin. So if you like it as well, please do comment and let me know. Okay, so let's jump on to the next part, which is higher order functions. Let's see what are higher order functions. Let me just have a look and see if anybody of you have questions. All right, nothing right now. Okay, cool, we're good. So a higher order function is basically a function that takes another function as a parameter, or it returns another function. So what it exactly means is that a function which takes another function as a parameter, or a function which returns another function. So that kind of function is called a higher order function. Pretty simple, right? Okay, let's see how to do it. So we'll just create a very simple example for this to understand and try to understand how exactly to achieve this. So in this video, we'll take parameter, sorry. So in this video, we'll take example of this, how to uh, take a function which has a parameter of another function. So let's create a function here, demo, which does nothing but it takes some value, maybe let's say some data of string type, and it prints it. Nothing major. It doesn't return anything. It says data is, and then it just prints the value of the data. Let's rename it to something meaningful. Print my data. Okay, so this works. So now let's create a higher order function. So this is basically a normal function. It's nothing much major. It has a simple function keyword, it has name, has a parameter, has no return type, basically unit, and then it is printing something. So it is not taking any other function as a parameter, or it is not returning another function. So this is a normal function. So let's create a higher order function here. All right, so let's call this function as my higher order function. I'm not gonna write like the entire function, renaming it too big, so let's just keep it short, my higher order function, and this will take another function as a parameter. So let's see how that works. So first of all, we'll give it an argument as some string data, so whatever data. So basically the idea is that I'm passing it to some data over here, and we'll have another parameter which will be basically a function. So let's call it my function. This is basically the name of the variable. So here we have another name of the variable which is basically taking some value as a function, and we define the return type for this. So how do we do that? So the return type will be a function which takes another function with a string parameter. Here we have the parameter, and it returns nothing, which is unit. We can define that here as well, unit. So we don't necessarily need it, but we can have it just for our understanding. So it will return a unit. So now let's see what happens. So I will call this function and pass in the data here, which will basically make a call to this function. But how do we pass in this function here? So for that, we need to call this function first, and let's do that here. Println printing data using my higher order function. All right, so let's call my higher order function, and we'll pass in some data. Let's say the data is today. Let's pass in the date today. So the date today is 18th of April. We'll pass in that date is 18th April. Okay, so that's my data. I'll use a named argument here, data is equals to this, and now I need to pass in the function here because it is expecting me to pass another parameter, which is my function, my okay, sorry, inside here my function. So here I will use this member reference operator to pass in the function which is print my data. I will pass in here print my data. That's it. So here we are passing the function, we are not calling the function actually. So that is the reason I'm not passing in any arguments here. So we're passing the data and this another method to this method. So now this method will print this data. Let's run this program and see what happens. So it says printing data using my higher order function, and okay, so what's wrong? It's printing Kotlin.unit. Okay, so it is returning a unit basically. So let's return a string and see if this works. Okay. So instead of this, we can use this. Okay, so let's run this program again. Let's run it. Did we get any error? Okay, we get an error. Okay, unit was expected. We need to change it over here. Sorry. It has to be string. Okay, so we are accepting a string here. So now this function exactly matches this function and we can pass it. Oops, there's some problem. Let's try to solve it. Okay, so let's see what happens. Change it back to unit. We don't need it. You can remove this and you can just have the println statement. Let's try to resolve what's exactly happening over here. If I'm missing something, please do let me know. Okay, so we are passing string here and to return a unit type. And here we are just passing the method print my data. Okay, I think this should have worked. Let's see, run it again. It's quite strange. I should have printed this data. So we're trying to print this data here. My higher order function. Let's remove this line and let's do this and let's directly just make a call to this method. So we're calling my header function, which should call this, and it should pass in some data here, and it should make a call to this print data. Okay, let's run this. Okay, so we got the string here. So I think there's something weird going on with the println statement over there. But okay, so the data is that we got the date 18 April. So it is working fine now, but I don't know why exactly it didn't work for a println statement, because maybe the entire expression was returning a unit. So maybe that's why it was printing Kotlin.unit. So now it is printing a string which is calling this method. Okay, so this is the higher order function where a function takes another function as a parameter, and there can be some function which can be returning another function. We can have an example for that as well. Okay, I believe higher order functions are really high. Function, a little bit of a spelling mistake here. And before that, let's see if you have any questions. I think my higher order function should return something. Okay. No, we don't need to return anything in the my higher order function. Oh yeah, exactly. Yes, that's why, because this was the type unit. So that is why it was returning a unit type in the println statement. You are correct, Kapil, here. Thank you very much. So that is the reason. If we would have just returned this value or like some string value, that would have been good. Okay, thanks, Kapil. Okay, so now let's say a function which returns another function. So let's create a function here, a higher order function here, function, and let's call it my another, or I'm just not going to say it my another higher order function, I'm just going to say it my function. I hope that works. So here I'll pass in a value here, number, integer type value, that is good. And now it should return something, right? So it should return another function which is an integer type argument, and it returns some integer. So this is the entire thing which it has to return, so which is basically a function. So here I can try to create just an expression or another lambda function, and I can just type, let's say, num. Okay, we already used number, and let's take number 2, some variable, and what it will do is it will have to add these two values, one this and one this. So this value is basically number 2, which I'm referring here. It will return number 2 plus the number. So that's basically the sum. Alright, so let's call this my function. Let's see if we are getting any comments. Okay, cool. So let's get back and call this println. Okay, let's not use the println because we again have the unit, so we won't make the same mistake again. Let's call the function directly, my function, and provide some values, 20. All right. Let's run this. So this is basically returning another method which is returning integer. So here we can use the value of this into another variable. Okay, and now we can print the sum. We are literally doing a lot of sums here. Let's run this. Sum is, this method is basically being returned. So this value over here is basically a function which is of a type, taking a parameter of type integer, and it is returning a type integer. So this function here is a higher order function which is taking some arguments here, and it is returning another function just like uh, a higher order function is supposed to do. So I can't think of a practical use case of this at this moment right now, but and I have and honestly I've never used this before, but it is good to know the concepts, and if you find a situation where you can apply it, it will be straight out of your head. Cool. So I think this is the end of this video. I will always say that be must and keep rocking. Again, thank you for joining this video. If you have any questions regarding this, please feel free to ask me in the Facebook group or in the comment section below. And some of you might be joining here who have not registered already for this course. I will ask you to, like, request you to please register for this course so that all the communication which is happening will be delivered to you right away. So I'll just post in the live comments the way to register, the registration form link. So You can register via this link, and I'll put that in the comment section below as well. The registration form link is this. So this is a Kotlin series that we are doing, and this is the third video for that. Okay, so I'll see you tomorrow then at 6 p.m. IST, and if you have any questions, please feel free to comment. And this code I will be right away copying it and pasting it on my GitHub, where you can download it in the description below. Cool. All right, thanks so much guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Be must and keep rocking.